Take a look at this picture on screen right now. This is a poll that was conducted on social media shortly after Luis Ortiz's 12-round points decision win over Malik Scott. And it is a perfect example of how reactionary and extreme many boxing fans tend to be. In their eyes, you either put on a great performance or you got exposed. You're either the real deal or you're a hype job. There's no middle ground in the eyes of many boxing fans. It's either one extreme or the other. Which is silly because more often than not, the middle ground is where the truth actually lies. But they flat out refuse to accept that. So one day they're saying Luis Ortiz beats everyone in the world apart from Tyson Fury. And the next day they're saying he can't even beat Dave Allen. And as you can see on screen, even Dave Allen himself finds that funny. And it's not as if Luis Ortiz got beaten up by Malik Scott. It's not as if he got knocked down or hurt or won by controversial split decision. No. He actually dropped Scott 3 times and never even came close to losing a round, much less losing the fight. But somehow that constitutes being exposed. It kind of reminds me of when Keith Thurman beat Leonard Bundu. A lot of people came out the woodwork and said Thurman got exposed because he was supposed to knock Bundu out. How could he go the distance with a 40-year-old man? This is shocking. He's a hype job. Or even more recently when Hughie Fury fought Fred Cassie. People were saying, oh, Fury's garbage. How could he go the distance with a journeyman like that? He should have knocked him out in a couple of rounds. Many boxing fans refuse to believe that certain fighters have extremely good chins or certain fighters are extremely awkward and difficult to tag, so on and so forth. They just refuse to believe this kind of stuff. Although, this is the reality. Yeah? When you look at Anthony Joshua, does Anthony Joshua possess the defensive skills and the survival skills of a Malik Scott? Take a look at Joshua when he got hurt by Dillian Whyte. Did he start moving around like Malik Scott and tucking up and making it very awkward for Dillian Whyte to tag him? No. He stood right in the middle of the ring like a sitting duck for Dillian Whyte's follow-ups. That's what he did. So although Joshua is obviously vastly superior to Malik Scott in terms of offense, he is not as good as Malik Scott when it comes to defense and survival. Nor is he as good as Fred Cassie when it comes to defense and survival. And this is what you have to bear in mind. You have to take every fight on its own merits. And as I've said before, and I'll say many times I'm sure in the future, the old adage in boxing that styles make fights really is one of the best pieces of wisdom in the boxing game. You have to look at the style of the opponent to understand why a fight played out the way that it did, or even when you're looking at a fight which has yet to take place. Look at the style of the opponent and say, hang on, has he actually faced anybody with this style before? Going into the Malik Scott fight, I was thinking, has Ortiz faced a mover like this before? A runner, a defensive guy like this? How is he going to be able to cope with somebody that negative? Particularly at his age, is he going to get frustrated? Is he going to find it difficult to land clean? That's what I was thinking going into the fight. But obviously a lot of other people were thinking it's going to be a walk in the park and he'll be able to land at will, clean shots whenever he wants to. Then the fact that he wasn't able to do that, he got exposed. It's got nothing to do with Malik Scott's style or the fact that he is a professional survivor in a boxing sense. Nothing to do with that. It's all to do with the fact that Luis Ortiz is a hype job and he got exposed. Reactionary boxing fans, man. Now, Ortiz, of course, has weaknesses. He has flaws. And I feel his biggest weakness and flaw is his stamina. In the second half of a fight, he tends to fade, I think, and we'll see that again in future because of his age. I'm not convinced the guy's 37, according to what Tony Bellew said and the Sky team was saying and other things that I've heard over the past year or so. Ortiz is probably closer to 43 years old than 37 years old. And at that kind of age, if he really is that old, you can't expect him to be able to fight for 3 minutes of every round for 12 rounds. It's just not going to happen. Well, in the first half of a fight, I think he's going to be deadly against pretty much anyone. The one thing I will say, though, is that his height, at least in my eyes, is disputable. I don't see this guy as being 6'4". I think he's closer to 6'2". Maybe he's 6'3" on a good day. And that right there is a more reasonable reason to view Ortiz in a different light rather than his performance against Malik Scott. The fact that he's not this 21st century size heavyweight, but actually more of a 20th century size heavyweight and mid 20th century size heavyweight at that in terms of his height, that does kind of make me wonder about him against some of the big guys in the division. And some people ask me, why would he lie about his height? Well, fighters have been lying about their heights for forever, since the beginning of time in boxing. Mike Tyson used to insist, or his people used to insist, that he was 5'11 and a half, when in reality he was actually 5'10. Amir Khan, for many years, was listed as being 5'10", when he's actually closer to 5'8". It's all down to marketing, particularly when you've got a heavyweight like Ortiz, who doesn't have that much time left. He has to get a move on. When he turned pro, they were looking at ways of making him stand out and looking at ways of getting the public on board. And if you tell the public that this guy is, when he turned pro, let's say he was 36 years old and he's only 6'2", the public are not really going to get excited. Or if you tell them that he's actually, let's say, 30 years old and 6'4", they're likely to be a bit more enthusiastic and a bit more hopeful about Luis Ortiz's chances. So this is why these things are done, for marketing purposes. The way I view Luis Ortiz now is not much different than the way I viewed him before the Malik Scott fight. All I saw is that he can be frustrated by a runner. But how many runners are there in the heavyweight division? Not many. Joshua's not a runner. Wilder's not a runner. These are aggressive guys. Joseph Parker's not a runner. These are guys who, even if they do get on their bike and move around, they don't have the survival skills and the awkwardness of a Malik Scott. They're not going to be that negative. They are going to engage somewhat, and that would give a Luis Ortiz chances to land. More chances than he had against Malik Scott. And obviously, they're going to be offensively a lot more dangerous for Luis Ortiz than Scott was. But again, I don't think that was the problem in the Ortiz fight. In the Malik Scott fight, it wasn't Ortiz's defense that was the issue. It was his offense that some people were questioning. But again, I think it's down to Malik Scott's awkwardness. The only guy in the heavyweight division really that can replicate what Scott did, and even better what Scott did, and add some offense to it, in my view, is Tyson Fury. He can move in a very awkward, slick fashion, not allow you to get close, be very good defensively. We saw that in the Klitschko fight. So, yeah, I think Fury picking him over Luis Ortiz, particularly after what we saw against Malik Scott, is very reasonable and rational. But to be acting like the boxing fans in that poll, as though Luis Ortiz can't even beat Dave Allen now, is that sensible? And no disrespect to Dave Allen, but I'm just being objective here and realistic. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, people. And Dave Allen has put his name forward, by the way, to be Luis Ortiz's opponent on December 10th. How do you see that fight going if it happens? And if not Dave Allen, who else would you like to see Luis Ortiz fight on that date instead? Some people have said David Price. How do you see a David Price-Luis Ortiz fight going? As I've said previously in other videos and in my live stream, I think Luis Ortiz takes David Price out. That's what I personally think. Maybe you disagree. Drop it all in the comment section below. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.